The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the first inaugural episode of the Personal Safety Show. My name is Marcus Melnick, and I am your host. I am thrilled and honored to be here. We're going to have a weekly show. 75% of it may cover firearms, whereas 25% will cover other safety issues, kind of like changing your batteries in your smoke detector, how to put out a fire with a fire extinguisher, medical safety, hospital safety, all sorts of different non-firearm safety things that we can do, safety activities that we can participate in. Who is Marcus Melnick, and why is he here? Well, I happen to have a lot of experience in public safety. Let me give you a little insight into some of my background, some of the alphabet soup after my name. And this isn't me patting myself on the back. This is me establishing myself as an expert in the topic of safety and having you have an understanding of where I'm coming from. First, I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in criminal justice, both from Loyola University, Chicago. Absolutely loved the program. It was fantastic. Later in my career, my employer sent me to Northwestern University's School of Police Staffing Command. This is one of those premier management schools. It's very much like the Kellogg School of Management, except the topic is public safety policing. It is one of the cream of the crop type training seminars throughout the United States for law enforcement executives. The other two are the FBI National Academy and the Southern Police Institute have a similar program to Staffing Command. For 35 years and counting, I know that's a long time, for 35 years I have been in various public safety roles. My career has several distinct chapters. The first chapter, healthcare security management, hospital security management. I started as a security officer in a hospital near where I grew up. I kind of cut my teeth in there, and I moved on to be a manager and security supervisor at a retirement home, at several Trauma One medical centers, as well as Children's Memorial Hospital. The theme throughout my career has really been protecting people's safety, protecting children, as you'll hear about my other part of my career. The next chapter is a little bit shorter. After working in both proprietary and contract security in healthcare, I made the switch and I worked in education for a number of years, where I was in a multiple needs classroom with the specific diagnoses were common, such as Fragile X syndrome and the autism spectrum. These students, they were junior high age, they had multiple diagnoses, and I know that some of the words I'm going to use are not the politically correct words of today. However, I'm going to be speaking in the political correct words of the time. So this was the late 1990s, and basically we had multiple diagnoses in our classroom. It could be mild mental impairment, MMI. There were students with Down syndrome. There was a lot of Fragile X and a lot of autism spectrum disorders. And a lot of these students were violent, so they needed a crisis intervention specialist. That was me. There was another one in the room as well. And we were in a mostly self-contained classroom at a junior high. I went on to become the director of security and safety for a large suburban school district. That was an interesting ride. I definitely got an education there. While I was there, I taught on the college level in an education program on how to set up a safety and security program in a school district. After the position was grant funded. I didn't know that at the beginning, but the position was grant funded, and when the grant funding ran out, I made the transition into municipal public safety, where for the next more than a decade, I worked in police and fire departments in administration, and ultimately I left the public sector and have pursued private sector business where I teach concealed carry, I teach advanced firearm skills, private lessons, anything that has to do with firearms. Pistols are my specialty or speciality. And I grew up with handguns with my family. I've been doing this for 43 years. I've been working with firearms for 43 years. And if you've Googled me and you've seen a picture of me, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, that's impossible. He's not old enough to have been doing this for 43 years. Well, I actually am. I started when I was 7 years old. That was 43 years ago. My father taught me how to shoot, and we would go to the range together. Right there, those words are my motivation for doing what I do. For me, teaching firearms, talking about firearms is a tribute to my father. Going to the shooting range, cleaning firearms, making ammunition in the basement were the activities that only my father and I did together, and unfortunately, he passed away when I was a teenager. So for me, whenever I go to a range, whether it's to teach someone or to recreationally shoot, I have these fond memories of my father and I going to a shooting range. Now, when I was 7 years old, I was not tall enough to see over the bench, so we would have to bring a little folding stool, and all of a sudden, I would instantly grow a foot or so I could see over this stool, and I can shoot the .22 that my father let me shoot. In addition, I'm an NRA certified basic pistol instructor and range safety officer. I am a published author. My books, if anyone is interested, are available at theoppositeofsafe.com. The two books that are currently in production, one is on handgun safety and one is on how we respond to life and death scenarios. What we're going to do, our tunnel vision, adrenaline dump, how this all affects us psychologically and physically. I'm also a second-generation inventor and a court-recognized expert witness. I have been an expert witness in a couple different security cases. I absolutely love doing it. It is a lot of fun. It is not easy. It is difficult. So what's this show all about? Well, we are going to be talking about safety, specifically firearm safety, but we're going to be talking about safety in other areas as well. With that said, as gun owners, we enjoy a right that people in other countries don't necessarily enjoy, and that is the Second Amendment right to own firearms. However, with that right comes some significant, steep responsibilities. As a gun owner, it is up to us to store, operate, and maintain our firearms safely. We'll be talking about safe storage throughout this show and the next show as well. And it's also up to us to ensure that unauthorized and untrained individuals cannot gain access to our firearms. This means any invited guest into your home, whether it's a family member, friend, neighbor, they should not have access to your firearms. And it's also up to us to learn and obey applicable laws that pertain to the purchase, possession, and use of a firearm wherever we live. Future shows are going to be talking about the most recent Illinois assault weapons ban, so stay tuned. But understand that guns are neither safe nor unsafe by themselves. They require a human being behind the firearm to fire it. And when gun owners learn responsible gun ownership and they practice responsible gun ownership, guns remain safe. They are an inanimate object. They are a tool. So if you put a firearm on a table, it's not going to go off unless there's a human behind it. Just like if you put a hammer on a table, it's not going to hammer in any nails until a human operates the machine. That was very high level. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the five major safety rules. I call them the 5 commandments. They are phrased differently throughout, depending on the literature that you're reading. Like the NRA will tell you, don't point the gun at anything you don't intend to destroy. I happen to be a little bit more specific. So here is Marcus's 5 rules of gun safety. Rule number 1, we treat every gun as if it is loaded. I cannot tell you how many stories I've heard of people getting shot with, and I'm making air quotes with my fingers, an unloaded gun. I used to work in the firearms industry at a gun store. And you ever deal with someone who looks like they're an idiot? Yes, I did that one day. Gentleman comes off the range, and he fits the description of a dummy. And he comes up to me, and he says, hey, I need a magazine for my gun, which is a part, if you're not sure what that is. And I'm happy customer service, energetic kind of guy. So I say, hey, what kind of gun is it? And he tells me, oh, it's a 9mm. Well, that's not the actual answer I was looking for. That's like saying, oh, I have a car that needs a part. Well, what kind of car is it? It runs on gasoline. Doesn't tell me anything, the caliber of the gun. No. What is the make and model? So he says, oh, it's a Sig Sauer. Now, Sig Sauer is one of the higher quality brands that's out there. Some people may disagree with me. That's a whole different comedy routine. But basically, he says it's a Sig. So I said, well, yeah, but what model number is it? And I'm still smiling, but inside I'm getting a little frustrated because I'm trying to be a dentist and pull teeth, pull information out of this guy. And he says, I don't know. He pulls back his shirt, unholsters his gun, sticks the muzzle of the gun into his gut, at which time a coworker grabs the gun out of his hand and says, what the HE double toothpicks, but he said the real word, are you doing? And the guy said, don't worry, it's not loaded. My coworker checked the firearm, and it was loaded. This guy, this customer, was promptly, and not nicely either, asked to leave the premises. That was a good call. Number 2, we only have a gun pointed in a safe direction. And when we're talking about handguns, there are 3 safe directions. The first safe direction is easy. That is down. If you're pointing a gun down and it discharges because your finger's on the trigger, we'll get to that rule in a little bit. If the firearm discharges and it's pointed down, nobody's going to get hurt. If the second safe direction is called downrange, which means pointed at the target. And as long as the gun is pointed at the target, if it negligently discharges, again, it is in a safe direction. You might get scared. You might have to change your underwear, but nobody gets hurt. There is a third safe direction. It's not what you think. It is not up. What goes up comes down. There was a story a number of years ago of a person who was at Busch Gardens in Florida, set up their lawn chair to watch fireworks on New Year's Eve, and in a neighboring community, someone was firing in celebration a firearm into the air, which never do. And the bullet came down and struck this person who in the leg as she was sitting on her lawn chair, who needed to be taken to the hospital. Now, she survived. There was no death involved, but it certainly ruined her night and probably ruined her perception of firearms. So, up is not the safe direction. The third safe direction is at the dirtbag who's attacking you. It is completely counterintuitive to point a gun intentionally at another human being. However, that is the one time when it would be acceptable. Next, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. If you're carrying a gun, you unholster it, point it at the target, aim. Only then, the instant before you're ready to fire, does your finger go on the trigger. The trigger is the way to operate the machine. Next, you have to know your target and what is beyond it and what is in front of it. So typically defensive shootings happen within about 20 feet. So if you have to pull your firearm to fire at someone who's threatening life, and behind that perpetrator, behind the bad guy, behind the dirtbag, there is a school that's in session, wow, that is not a good time to take a shot. During stressful scenarios, our accuracy plummets. Our hands shake. That's a reaction to having adrenaline in a bloodstream. And it's very possible one could miss the target or a bullet could penetrate through the target and continue on. Similarly, if you have a bad guy 20 feet away from you, and in between you and the bad guy is a young father pushing a stroller, probably not a good time to take a shot. The other thing that I say is if you ever get a chance to shoot cans off of a fence at a farm or outdoors, it's a lot of fun. You get instant feedback. I did it once as a child with my father. At the time, I was not as skilled as I am now, so I didn't hit much, but he hit every can that he aimed at, and you see the can jump or fall over. It was great. It was a blast, so to speak. Do it. But if you can see the houses past the fence that you're shooting on, don't do it. If you can see the houses past the fence, it's probably not a good idea. The fifth rule or the fifth commandment of firearm safety is one that I've never read about other than having my father teach me. I did additional research on this, and his words to me, and I'll expand on it, but his words to me were, you never handle a gun in anger. Now, I've found out that throughout my career, it's not really you never handle a gun in anger. It is you never handle a gun in an emotional state of mind. And I did research. I wrote a book about it called The Opposite of Safe. If anyone wants to read it, it is available at theoppositeofsafe.com. And the book basically characterizes what happens to us on the inside, our internal perception, our internal physiology, but it's written for lay people. It is not a medical journal, and it is ready to be read by the everyday common person. It's an easy read. You can get it done in a day or so. And it details how when we are in an emotional state, and this is everyone, it's involuntary. When we are in an emotional state, a lot of things happen to us. One of the main things that happens to us, or the precursor to all of the other physical symptoms, is our blood in our brain switches to flow more towards the amygdala, which are two almond-shaped nodes just above the brainstem. Big deal. The other part of the brain that's important for this conversation is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is right behind your forehead, or if you have a five head. Okay, guys, I can use a little humor here. So if you have this five head, your prefrontal cortex is your thought center. It is behind your forehead. And what happens is the blood rushes to the amygdala and less blood goes to your prefrontal cortex. And what happens is we react emotionally. This happens to everyone. Keep in mind or picture a child or even an adult touching a hot stove and they immediately recoil. Well, that's because the message was sent to their amygdala, and their amygdala declared an emergency in their body, and you recoiled immediately, taking the hand away from the hot stove. Pain comes later. Realization of what happened comes later. Another good way to describe this is, have you ever been in an argument with someone, maybe your spouse, maybe your child, maybe a coworker, and later on thought of the perfect thing to say, but the conflict is over? Or later on, you regret something that you said. That is you're experiencing this amygdala hijack. That's the psychological term for it. Basically, your amygdala hijacks your body for survival. Now, this also happens in non-life-threatening scenarios. As a matter of fact, public speaking is one of people's greatest fears. And they may react physiologically to public speaking as if they are in danger. Their hands start shaking, they get this adrenaline dump, etc., and they're not in any physical danger. That actually has happened to me a number of times. Recently, I went and I purchased a car from a former friend, and it was great. I had a great experience. My wife wanted to purchase a car, and he basically was a complete jerk. I can give you the details in a future show. I experienced tunnel vision. I experienced auditory exclusion. All of these things that I've written about in my book, I experienced. Was I in physical danger at a car dealership? No, I was not in physical danger, but I was upset. I was emotional. That would not be a good time for me to go to the range. Similarly, I've had plans to clean firearms in my garage. They do require maintenance. That'll be a show topic in and of itself. and something happened in the household. I got upset. It's so unimportant that I don't even remember what it was. And I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to use this firearm, or I'm not going to clean this firearm right now. I'll have to do it tomorrow. And because I know my recovery from being upset, the time period, and I needed a sleep cycle in between. And we'll talk about sleep cycles again in a future episode. So you've learned what makes me tick. Who is Marcus Melnick? Well, I am an anti-violence specialist. Recently, I went on a couple college tours with my second son, and when coming back from The Ohio State, I saw a billboard that said 63 gun suicide deaths a day. There are people out there who are anti-gun. There are people out there who are pro-gun. I am neither anti-gun nor pro-gun. I understand that firearms exist in our society. They probably will always exist in our society, no matter what laws are passed. There are 120 firearms for every 100 people. There's 20% more firearms in the United States than people. That is how popular this is. Millions of firearms are sold. And let me get back to the point. I am an anti-violence specialist. I don't want anyone to commit suicide, but I don't really care about the implement. I don't care if it's a gun, a knife, asphyxiation. Violence is violence, and I teach people how to respond and react to that violence so that they are not sucked in to being killed or injured. And a minute ago when I said there's pro-gun people, there's anti-gun people, there's activists out there, my role is an educator. That is what I am focused on. I'm focused on bringing the truth to people about firearms, about personal safety, about situational awareness, which is an entirely different topic. But I am about, let's teach people what it really is. A lot of times the media gets it wrong. There's this whole big thing, let's ban assault rifles, let's ban assault rifles. But assault rifles are rarely used in crime. They get some notoriety because they're used in mass shootings and recent mass shootings. But the reality is handguns kill more people than assault weapons, and I say that with quotes. Feet kill more people than firearms. Medical malpractice kills more people than firearms. Yet people are just, oh my God, they're up in arms about guns. Now, there are a lot of things that happen without guns. I live in a town, and a couple months ago, there was a quadruple murder suicide. It was a very sad situation. My knowledge is only from what I've heard in the media. Basically, either an ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband returned to a home. They had a restraining order out on him. The wife dropped it. He returned to the home, and he murdered his wife or soon-to-be ex-wife, his mother-in-law, his two beautiful daughters, and the dog, and then he killed himself, all with a knife. So once again, I don't really care if it's a gun or a knife or a car or a bomb or whatever. The implement to me doesn't matter. I am here to be anti-violence. I am not here to be anti-gun. Now, if you are anti-gun, if you are pro-gun, you are more than welcome to comment on anything. If you have comments, questions, concerns, would like to be on the show, would like to sponsor an underwriting spot, mention your business on the show, I can be reached at firearmmentorcard.com. That is my electronic business card. In addition to teaching people, I do a ton of business networking and Zoom calls. And that's an easy way for me to share my business card when I am on a Zoom call or the radio program. My website, if you wanted to check out my blog, is firearmmentor.com, and you can search on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I've got presence there, and I do YouTube videos all the time. I should say a couple times a month, not all the time, in addition to this radio show. So those are the ways to get a hold of me. Those are the ways to look me up. You can also Google my name, Marcus Melnick. You'll see a lot of information there. I do not have a small internet footprint. I have a rather large one just because I've been in the media commenting not only on firearms issues, but on other issues as well, such as some grants that I had received for a fire department that I worked on. That's one of the articles that'll pop up, as well as some historical information about my background. There are plenty of other rules and regulations that are going to be covered in the show, additional safety concerns, the legalities of when you can and cannot use your firearm, what it takes to purchase a firearm, and more. If you would like to hear something, a topic, or just have a quick question, feel free to reach out to me. FirearmMentor.com is the website. FirearmMentorCard.com is the electronic business card. The opposite of Safe.com is where you can, if you so desire, purchase or research some of the books that I've gotten, and then you can also go on your social media platforms and look me up or look up my business, Firearm Mentor or Marcus Melnick. I'd be happy to connect with you. If you are a listener and we don't have any contact and out of the blue you contact me, please just tell me, hey, I'm a listener to your radio show, or I got you on Facebook, or I got you on YouTube. And that way, that'll help me determine where my clientele or where the people who have questions are coming from. That helps me greatly in outreach, and I'd love to hear from you. So stay tuned for more information. Thank you. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.